like to thank the organizers for having me in this group, whose work I've been following and admiring from afar for many years. It's a pleasure and an honor. My paper today discusses the ritual enactment of the luminous body motif as part of baptism between the 4th and the 6th century CE. So I'm inviting you to explore together some real spaces and to see some external theophanies. The info I present today draws on a PhD on the use of light in Christian ritual and spaces in late antiquity. So it's a very, very thin synthesis of a much more complex study, and I hope I did a good job synthesizing it. Between the late 3rd and the 6th century, baptisteries reminiscent of Jesus' tomb in Jerusalem were built around the Mediterranean as spaces meant to complement a very well thought out and complex initiation process. Many of the buildings survive, but in terms of decoration we don't have as much information we would like to. Nevertheless, the two cases in which the decoration is preserved in an enough good state to allow for a complex analysis, corroborated by written information, indicates that they are representative. So we can extrapolate from these two cases that we have. In order to understand the spaces and the ritual, I studied the fathers' writings on baptism. And I was surprised to find recurrent promises of theophanies and in direct encounters with God. Promises made to the catechumens, the people who were being prepared for baptism. And these promises were made by precisely the same fathers who, in treatises and other writings, denied the possibility to ever encounter God in the body, which was, in this period, quite common desire, to see God. So I understood that pre-baptismal and baptismal, let's say, information, written and visual, needs to be treated as something particular, right? That is influenced by the audience of the ritual, which was not Christian, or it was somebody with some knowledge of Christianity, but not the focal points, right? The disciplina arcani was in function still, and that it was directly related to the ritual. So I approached the decoration and spaces of baptism in similar manner, not as Christian per se, but as something in between Roman society and Christianity. And what came out from this approach, when I took into consideration the spaces, so the form, the decoration with its qualities, the nocturnal setting, and the illumination, which was essential because the ritual was nocturnal. So the illumination shaped how the space was perceived, right? Where was the staging of theophanies? Oh, I didn't discuss this one. This is just to give you an example of a typical baptisteries, the very well preserved one in Grado in northern Italy, and rather contemporary depiction of the Anastasis, the tomb of Jesus. So the model for baptisteries ideally was the tomb of Jesus, because the person was dying and being resurrected with Christ through baptism. This is the earlier of the two case studies that we have, the San Giovanni in Fonte Baptistery in Naples from the early 5th century. The decoration, baptisteries were centralized, central plant buildings. Now, the decoration is not preserved completely, but in enough good state to give us a relevant impression of how the whole might have looked like. When you consider the fact that this type of structure was usually had an oculus in that period, right? So the person seeing it from the outside expected an oculus to be there. You consider the fact that it is nocturnal, right? So the dark blue background tends to dematerialize on the night sky outside. That the elements rendered in gold and glass mosaic interact in a very, let's say, in a stronger manner than the rest with the artificial illumination. What comes out is an illusory oculus created through the decoration, whose underlying pattern is a nocturnal sun. Now, in this case, the sun has 8 rays, right? And I made here just the part that are gold. And the disk opens to allow for a vision on a sky background with stars of the symbol of Christ. Now, this is exactly the imagery that we find roughly in the same period in a text mistakenly called the Mitras liturgy, that Sarah Ile Johnson identified as the initiation, theurgic initiation, where you see a night sky and its disk opens and you see a youthful God and you come to encounter the God. Now, this God, youthful God, we find in the second extant baptistry. Now, made a few decades later in Ravenna, on the left we have a reconstructive drawing of what it might have looked like, and on the right we have a photo of the dome. It is restored but original, so it was like this in the 5th century when they made it. It's a lot bigger and made with a lot more means than the one in Naples, so they could work on it and add more detail, but the underlying structure is the same. I would invite you to squint and look at the image on the right, because the dark blue background lost much of its hue. So you have to imagine that the contrast was a lot stronger. It was close to black, right? So we find a Baptist scene on a golden background at the center with an undulating ribbon that points to the solar motif and 12 golden candelabra and apostles like rays around it. And in the writings of the very fathers who were building these baptisteries, we recurrently find the reference to Christ as our veru sol and the apostles sent as rays, right? Because they were Christianizing the motive of the sun that was too powerful to eradicate. Now, I would draw your attention to the fact that the people to whom these visions were presented were people who did not know what to expect. They were told they will meet God and it's potentially destructive if they're not worthy, right? So they were kept in darkness, so to say, threatened. And they were seeing this after 40 days of sleep and food deprivation, which alters serotonin level and makes you prone to hallucinations. Ideally. And it was very fast. If we consider that, taking into consideration that Ambrose had 1,000 people to baptize, and baptism took place in the night of Easter, which was a very busy night, the time spent in the baptistry was very short, most likely. Milan was a great center. Ravenna would have had less, but anyway, important number. Now, this nocturnal sun that we found was present in all the initiations that we know from late antiquity. In Isis, in Mithras, Theology, Neoplatonism, Pseudo-Paulinus and Firmicus Maternus, they all mention this nocturnal sun as the motor of transformative experiences during initiations, right? So I think the bishops offered what people expected, hoped for, and recognized as efficient in that generation, right? And this allows us to read texts such as the one by Basil in a new light, pun intended. He says, often then, after a man is purified from the shame whose stain he took through his wickedness and has come back again to his natural beauty, and as it were cleaning the royal image and restoring its ancient form, only thus it is possible for him to draw near to the Paraclete. And he, like the sun, will by the aid of your purified eye show you in himself the image of the invisible. And in the blessed spectacle of the image you will behold the unspeakable beauty of the archetype. So we already have here a knot of motifs that sends to the archetypal image in which humanity was made and it was reinstated in baptism, right? And these solar references were sending to this common experience. Now, while an impressive find in its own, this solar motif, as it testifies to the bishop's willingness to adopt and adapt, I will focus here on what it did to the initiate's body. Seeing God was transformative, right, in antiquity, because only like sees like. This was a fundamental principle. and the baptism's body was transformed by the vision of God in the dome. The Father seemed to have staged the regaining of the luminous aura that Adam had from the Logos. And this was made, I would argue, through the joint effect between the anointed and wet body and the numerous lights present in the baptistry. Pre-baptismal anointing of the whole body is not present in all cases. They were different, but some sort of pre-baptismal anointing, whether the whole body, the face, or the forehead, or something, is present everywhere, from what we know. There are some statistics made. Now, this, together with the wet body, as one exited the font into a baptistry, it was filled with artificial illumination, because God manifested as light, and it was so important in baptism that it penetrated the iconography of the scene. So artificial illumination comes to stand for baptism in this period. It was so central to it. We have this resplendent, lustrous shine that the bodies gain as they exit the font. And the fathers, I think, it is to this effect that they refer as the regaining of the image. And they use various formulas to refer to this. They talk about the putting on of the shape of Christ, the regaining of the shining garment, becoming like God, shining in the likeness of angels, and so on. These are all motifs that we all know from the so-called apocryphal literature and all these strains about the faces of God and angelomorphic and Christomorphic traditions. Ephraim the Syrian said that whenever he looked at the oil, he saw the anointed one, that is Christ, looking back at him. Chrysostom, addressing a wider audience, either in Antioch or in Constantinople, used the more, let's say, far-reaching image of the golden statue. And he said, speaking in the first instruction to the newly baptized, that, I quote, "When a man takes and melts down a gold statue, which has become filthy with the filth of years and smoke and dirt and rust, he returns it to us all clean and shining. So too, God takes this nature of ours when it is rusted with the rust of sin, when our faults have covered it with the abundant soot, and when it has destroyed the beauty he put in it in the beginning," right? "And he smelts it anew. He plunges out into the waters as into a smelting furnace, and lets the grace of the Spirit fall on it instead of flames. Then he brings us forth from the furnace, renewed like newly molded vessels, to rival the rays of the sun with our brightness. He has broken the old man to pieces, but has produced a new man who shines brighter than the old." While in a homily on the epistles to the Colossians, he says that, "Marvel not that generation and destruction take place in baptism. For tell me, dissolving and cementing, are they not opposite? It is evident to all. Such is the effect of fire, for fire dissolves and destroys wax, but it cements together metallic earth and works it into gold. So in truth, here also, the force of the fire, having obliterated the statue of wax, has displayed a golden one in its stead. For in truth, before the bath we were of clay, but after it of gold." Now, this of course is not a new technique. Most of you here will be familiar with the text of 2 Enoch, when the patriarch is taken by Michael and is anointed, and this gives a lustrous shine. "And Michael took off for me my garments and anointed me with good oil, and the appearance of the oil was more resplendent than a great light." And we have a 3rd century mosaic from Patras with anointed athletes. We know they were anointed before fighting. This was and we have certain elements of their bodies that are represented using light ochre tesserae to give off this shining effect. So it was something known in both Judaic and Greek-Roman context. Now, with the lighting, we don't see this tesserae here. And we know from Gospel of Philip and other large number of texts about the association between chrism and light. The chrism enabled the fathers to refer to the baptisms as Christ's, that is, anointed ones, literally, and thus stress their shared image with Christ. And we have Cyril of Jerusalem talking to the newly baptized, saying to them that having been baptized into Christ and put on Christ, you have been made conformable to the Son of God, and for God having foreordained us into adoption as sons, made us to be conformed to the body of Christ's glory. Having therefore become partakers of Christ, you are properly called Christs, and of you God said, touch not my Christs, or anointed ones. Now you have been made Christs by receiving the antitype of the Holy Ghost, and all things have been wrought in you by imitation, because you are images of Christ. Eikones este Christo. Right? So they played with the potentiality that this practice gave to them to talk about them, make the point theologically, but also refer to something that happened in their lives, in reality. Gregory of Nazianzus, and I'm close to the end, speaking also to the newly baptized, taught them what to say to the devil who will come tempt them as he did with Christ. And he says, say to him, relying on the seal, that is baptism in general, or more likely the act of chrismation, I am myself the image of God. I have not yet been cast down from heavenly glory as you were due to your pride. I have put on Christ. I have been transformed into Christ by baptism. Worship me. Now, to those who are not familiar with the tradition of Adam being made into an actual image of God and being worshipped, and Satan's envy and fall coming from this is quite shocking, a statement from a most Orthodox father. So we're talking about Basil, we're talking about Gregory of Nazianzus, we're not talking about people on the periphery of Christianity. These are the very fathers who made Christianity and the sacraments in this period. And of course, these are, I mean, this oration, everybody reads it, it's very famous and it's always been translated, but it's always been skipped, this part. So, now, and with this...
I haven't seen that. But I can think of another parallel.
I mean, I'm cherry picking the nicest ones, but these are representative, so it's not isolated cases. This imagery, maybe not as strong as in these cases that I put here, is found throughout. So 4th and 5th century in all the important fathers who discussed baptism, and the sources of baptism are really, really abundant. So there's a lot to be made there. Our awareness of the fact that they were staging this luminous glory and divine image in baptism changes how we can now work with what was until now considered only theological statements. Because, for example, when we have Cyril of Alexandria talking about people being conformed to the image of God, for example, here, the image of the Son of God was impressed on us, making us the same form as himself, and engraving the illumination which is through his own spirit as a divine image upon those who believe in him, that they too may now be called both gods and sons of God as he is. We know that they were referencing a common experience that both him and the audience shared. And in this period, this created an important prejudice that united the community, because there's still a great part of the people who are listening to this and they've not been baptized. So this is a form of creating, it's an inside joke, or, you know, in a way, right? That brings together the community, and at the same time, simultaneously, it marginalizes the other ones, making them to want to be part of baptism. So in the 4th century, we see not only the recovery of this tradition of the luminous Adam, but its placement at the very center of Christian life by these fathers who made it the starting point of a life in Christ. Thank you.